right. You can
So,
see I'm wearing in all whatever to you. I'm wearing the one Star Wars related shirt that I own. So you got that going for you. That's how much I like you, Mark.
well, I appreciate that, considering you're one of my few friends who have different feelings about Star Wars than many of us. But
Yeah.
I've got a frosty beverage, so there you go, rum chata.
We're starting. Well, it brings us to the dance. So.
There we go. You get the PBR. Oh
Yes.
yeah. Another final cut. Yeah.
Brother.
Yeah, brother. 15th anniversary edition of the final cut. I never thought I'd utter those words, sir.
Only because you can't count to 15 without taking your shoes off, right?
No, I can't. No. That's why I'm not wearing shoes right now.
Oh, yeah. Good shout.
Well, thank you, Doctavius, for joining me. You're the final episode of the 15th anniversary series of special extended final cuts, by the way.
Yes, because I'm dragging my heels a little here, but yes.
No,
not out of a lack of desire. I'm just slow. And
I went and saved the best for last.
Right.
How you doing, sir? How you doing?
All things pretty good.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
With all the it's been an interesting year. I won't lie to that.
There
not quite differently interesting from last year, certainly, but
it's still interesting. Yes,
still interesting.
Absolutely. And speaking of interesting, yes, folks, if you haven't been watching, shame on you. We are doing special version of the final cut extended version. There, it's going to try not to have spoilers, but we'll probably have some spoilers. My Children of Men one had many a spoiler with Mr. Ian Simmons. Go figure.
Right.
But yes, if you haven't been following, I asked my wonderful spoiler room crew members to pick a film from 2006, thanks to the suggestion by Mr. Andrew Shearer, and we would talk about it. But the caveat, of course, is that they have to come on camera with me on the final cut and talk about it for a bit of time. And I am joined by my longtime friend, and I do mean long, and some reason he still is hanging around with me. He has been with me quite some time. He was my cameraman for many years at the film festivals. It is none other than Mr. Doctavius. Doc, how are you, sir?
It's good. It's been pretty good. Like I said, all things considered, and it's been a year of change, and some of them good and some of them acceptable. And even some of the less acceptable ones were good. So all is well.
Well, I appreciate you taking time, sir, and it's always a pleasure getting to talk to you. We've known each other a long time, and you're the one who kind of turned me on to the star of tonight's films.
Yeah, that's believable.
Because you and I we were getting to know each other back in the day in high school and into a little after that. You had Rumble in Toronto. I mean, Bronx or wherever they actually filmed it. Jackie Chan was on the rise, and I got introduced to him. And then your love of Jackie introduced me to more of the films from that weren't released in the US, the imports in that. And I was like, holy crap, this guy's awesome. So it is appropriate that tonight, although I don't know if I watched the right one. I mean, we normally don't do TV series, and I was waiting for him to show up. 2006 TV series Robin Hood was what we're supposed to watch, right?
I thought we were watching Evil Bong.
Evil Bong. Oh, no. No. No, not.
If you wouldn't have said, last time I watched the wrong film, I wouldn't have even come up with that joke.
I know.
I've been sitting on it since. So, I'm like, I'm gonna Evil Bong.
Not. It begins. It's got to be in it, but no.
Yes.
Tonight we're watching Robin. We watched Robin B. Hood.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yes,
but there are two different cuts of it apparently, so technically we could have still watched two different things.
Oh boy. Well, the only one I was able to find was on Tubi with a horrible dub, but
at least I had subtitles for mine. So
well, that's a good thing. So
you remember about how long yours? Well, that was a loaded question about to happen. About how long was yours?
That's a rather personal question, sir.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Well, with it had mine had commercials, but
Oh,
it,
okay.
it ran 206 minutes. I mean, not 200,
Okay.
2 hours and 6 minutes, and probably an hour and 47 of that was actual movie.
Okay.
So, and I
So when
totally
I
screwed up my joke. I was going to try to play off that I watched the Robin Hood TV series, just like our 10th anniversary one, where I
yes,
did legitimately watch the Rog film, but yet I knew the other film we were going to talk about so well.
it was fine.
We were able to talk about it because I watched that one
Yes.
many times. But this was a
That's
first
where
one.
Evil Bong came in. Yeah.
That's where Evil Bog came in.
I haven't
Absolutely.
watched that one either.
You're not, don't.
No, I'm not in a hurry. No, it was just such a joke between you and Derek and
Oh
things. And
God,
I was like,
yeah.
I'm gonna
It's
clip
well,
my little.
it was 2020. So anyway, that's an whole other. But here we are, Robin B. Hood,
Yes, sir.
starring Mr. Jackie Chan and directed by Benny Chan.
Yes.
And if you could, sir, as I do have done with these episodes, what's the synopsis
Okay.
of this film? Go for it,
No,
sir.
I was prepping for this because I knew it was coming.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
uh very basically, I'll try and keep this to somewhat of a minimum, I guess.
Ah,
Jackie is Thongs. I don't think that nickname is really explained anywhere.
no, neither one are really.
One of them I could at least the other two pseudonyms I could make sense of. Thongs,
Mhm.
I never quite. I'm sure there's a joke there that I'm just not culturally getting.
Yeah.
But he is partnered with Octopus,
Mhm.
and I believe Octopus is because he's a womanizer. He has many
Many
hands.
hands. That's what I gathered too. Yeah.
That's my joke,
Yeah.
and then, or that's my interpretation of the joke. And
Yeah.
then their getaway man and the guy who kind of plans a lot of things is landlord,
Right.
who
Which
is indeed actually their landlord.
so-
So that one wasn't much of a stretch. That was
no.
the easiest one to figure out. So they're burglars, and at the beginning of the film, we see them opening a safe and robbing something, while at the same time it's kind of intercut with this woman giving birth, not graphically giving birth. She's, it's
No.
just in a hospital. And as this progresses, we realize that they're actually robbing the hospital.
Yes.
So landlord's out in the car outside, figuring out where they're going to meet them. Octopus and now Thongs are trying to escape, trying to be, subtle as they walk through this gigantic hospital. And they get kind of tumbled. So they're trying to get away. They're breaking up. There's a little bit of your standard kung fu action going on, if you will. But at the same time this is occurring, the woman that's giving birth apparently has a ex-boyfriend who seems to be having some issues understanding that their relationship is over.
Yeah.
And he manages to snatch the newborn. She's still on a gurney, so he grabs her and he's telling her how it'll be okay. I'll raise him as my own. We can get together. And she's like, no, this is not happening. This
Yeah.
is over. And in the course of the plus side for Thongs and Octopus is now all the attention goes on to this guy, and they're kind of, the pressure's off them. But these events come together kind of in this gigantic lobby with these tall escalators, and they shut the escalator down as they're trying to get the baby back from the guy, and things happen and he inadvertently lets this kid fly. And even though they're burglars, Jackie's not Thongs is not an evil person.
He's not an evil person.
So
Yeah.
he goes through and does the things and manages to get a hold on this baby. It's all swaddled up, so he manages, it's swaddled tightly enough where he can just grab it and it doesn't immediately, just the kid doesn't fall right through. And it's about another 15-30 seconds of him as the kid's slowly sliding out of there, and people are able to get underneath the child and catch it
And catch
and
the
all is
baby.
well.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, cool, kid's safe, let's get the hell out of here. And then we see them kind of go through the next, at that point they're like, okay, fine, has nothing to do with us, and they move on. And we start exploring the less pleasant parts of these three men's lives. landlords and his wife had a child and who died as an infant. He blames himself, but she has not gotten over this. It appears that it's been some years, and she's dealing with her own mental issues based on this. It's admittedly treated initially very cartoony,
Yeah.
but as the movie goes on, they kind of, at least the version I saw, they start filling in,
Mm-hmm.
and she becomes increasingly less cartoony and more of a person who's dealing with a thing.
Keep the spoilers down a bit, Doc.
I'm trying.
It's hard with this movie. No, I know there's a lot.
It's 15 years old.
Yeah, that's true.
Just because it was a first watch for both of us.
No,
this is not what I expected.
I'm just giving you shit because Ian was the same thing. He's like, what is the length of time for spoilers? No, please. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just giving you shit. So please, by all means, continue.
I accepted your shit. Thank you.
Not in your face though with the diaper. No.
Hey, there's your own spoiler.
Yeah.
Octopus's problem is that he is investing in his future, if you will, by trying to get a rich wife, but he spends a lot of money on this woman he's courting. So basically everything he steals goes to pay for all these fancy things she wants. And unfortunately, he has the problem of being already married.
Yes.
And she's not keen to divorce him. She's very quiet, very subdued, and he's much more energetic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And just keeps saying, just divorce me, let's get moving on, blah, 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 because he's that. Thongs' problem is that he's a gigantic gambler. So all the money he gets, he throws away, essentially.
Yeah.
And we have a very emotional sequence where he goes to visit his, I believe, siblings and his elderly father.
Yeah.
And they're, his nieces, presumably nephews, maybe, whatever. And his father kind of disowns him because the whole neighborhood is, again, they know that's where his family is, and all the people who are coming to try and collect on his gambling debts come there and hassle them as well. And so we see them all at these low points. They all have these things that they're dealing with. And landlord hasn't been wasting his money. He's got $3 million in a safe right next to his bed until that gets stolen. The burglars have been burgled. So they all get to this point where they're kind of desperate for the next job. And the word comes through an associate. Landlord gets a gig to basically burgle this fortress of a house. And Octopus and Thongs think that they're just there to steal money and things. And no, it turns out they're there to steal a baby, to reunite him with his grandfather, is the story.
Yes.
And it gets more increasingly complicated from there, because even though we kind of maybe figure out as an audience that this and the baby from the beginning are connected, they don't make that connection right away, because why would they?
Yeah.
And hijinks kind of go from there, but it becomes this conversation about family and about how family sometimes treats each other. And man, this was harsh. I got halfway, I'm like, why did I make us watch this? I had never seen it before either. And I'm like, I thought this is going to be a lighthearted Jackie Chan film, and it's not that it's not, but it's coupled with this vein of very emotional sequences about people who are trying to get to that next step, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the turns that this script took was surprising. There is still the Jackie action scenes, which, okay, I sound shallow. I really enjoyed the action scenes, especially the final. Holy crap, the whole sequence at the end where they're trying to rescue the baby.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that was like tried and true. I mean, it's like you're waiting for like the whole movie for a sequence like this, and this sucker goes on for a good 5-10. These guys are just beating the snot out of each other in true Jackie Chan form.
Final bosses,
final
you're at
bosses.
the end of the video game. These are the guys that you got to throw more quarters at than the rest of the team.
But it's got a couple other great action sequences too, like when the baby. It was little spoilers, folks, but when the baby becomes in peril because the basket that it's in is suddenly attached to a armored vehicle and they drive through. man, there was those two sequences especially. I was like, holy wow, for a action comedy, or the like you said, with the vein of the family angle,
Yeah.
it was like it was like there's trying to do both. And I think it accomplishes it fairly well, though
Yeah.
it makes it long. I
No, it's true.
I mean, what do you think with the pacing? Because the pacing was odd with this film.
Yes and no. And
Mhm.
I guess that's why it sounds like you may have watched the more theatrical cut, I guess.
Right.
Because what it sounds, from what little I got to find regarding it, it sounded like they cut it down because there was a lot of this story
Mhm.
with the interpersonal relationships, and they were trying to cut it back to the action a little bit. The version I saw was about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's
And
about yeah.
yeah, so 100, what's that, 135 then?
Yeah. That was
Okay.
about that was close
Okay.
to what mine was too.
Okay. Okay.
Um
I thought you said a different number, but
Oh
I
no,
could be
wait. Well, no, the one on Tubi,
misremembering.
it said 2 hours and 6 minutes.
Yeah, and then you said there were commercials
But
in
there
it.
were
Well,
commercials in it.
yeah, so they
But
may not have trimmed out that much. It might have been some of the more uh decartooning of some of the
it,
characters, perhaps.
yeah, it was just unusual, and also the dubbing. Whew, that was rough. I was hoping to find the subtitle version, but I wanted to watch it on my TV, and Tubi had it. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I started watching it, and I'm like, oh, this is dubbed. I'm like, well, I'm into it now. I'm not gonna stop it and go
Yeah.
downstairs. I'm like, I'll just finish it out. Um, you
But
know,
yeah,
it's a different Jackie Chan film than what I'm used to seeing of his.
I felt that myself. And some of that, I wonder, I have faint memories of reading interviews like in the 2000s when he was spending a lot of time in America doing like the rush hours and things like in
Mhm.
the Samurai and Noon and that, where, if I remember correctly, he was talking about all the things he was learning about just how films are made in America.
Right.
Not necessarily like, oh, we do something wrong and they do something right, but just to go, here are things I haven't thought about, because you get
Right.
used to doing things in a certain way, and then it's successful. You don't want to meddle with it too much. So there was part of me wondering if this, and it's not that he hasn't, here I am regressing in my own sentence. He has done movies with a deep emotional core before. The first one that popped into my mind is Heart of Dragon, where
Mhm.
he Sammo plays his um, mentally, is mentally challenged still acceptable to
I
say?
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. I'm going to go
Yeah.
with that because I know that it's better than the word that they probably used in 1986.
Definitely, probably better than the words that would have been used in
It was
1986.
deemed accurate at the time, but
Yeah.
it was treated poorly, and
Yeah.
I won't say that I wasn't part of that problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Sammo, he's
Yeah.
got a childlike demeanor, even though he's an adult male.
Mhm.
So, and that has a lot of that too, where Jackie gets to emote, but this is Jackie gets to act his butt off in this one.
Yeah, he
at times.
does.
There's a lot of Jackie's sincerity in this that you don't necessarily need in a Rumble in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Go back to the beginnings of all this.
Yeah. Well, that, and just, it says comedy, and it does have comedic elements in it, I will say. Not nearly as much as what you might be used to for a Jackie Chan comedy. This is
Yes.
more like a dramedy and now that you mentioned it with the US cinema influences, I see that in here, because this is like the late 90s type of dramedies, to where you had your comedic elements, but there's also some heavy drama in here. I mean, there are some moments in here that you're just like, wow, there's some kind of deep character moments I wasn't expecting. Like you mentioned with the landlord, and even with Octopus, and his relationship with his wife, his actual wife, in the movie, the character's wife. There's some serious moments in here where you're just like, okay, they could have played this more comedic, but it's not. Or you'd get those scenes where you start to be haha, and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, Okay, I feel bad for giggling at the beginning of this scene. Uh,
A little.
a little.
One of the, as you were going through that, not to try and give away too much of this, but
Oh, that's
there's
okay. It's
the
fine.
early on after uh, they end up having
Mhm.
custody of this infant. Jack Thongs. I always just call the Jackie's character Jackie.
Oh,
It's
it's just
instinctive,
Jackie.
so I'm
Yeah.
trying to do it properly. Thongs gets a call that or a text that his dad has had a severe stroke.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to go visit him, and then a few minutes later, as I'm watching, I'm going, did they just not show us him going to visit his dad, or did he not? No, he forgot all about it because he's
Mhm.
busy with this,
With
trying
the
to figure
baby.
out how to take care of an infant. So he later on does eventually have time to go back, and no one's home. And as he's leaving, bumps into his dad and one of his other relatives, trying to help his dad up the step. And dad is shaking, his left side is
Yeah.
somewhat parallel, and Jackie's like sobbing into his back because he can't neither of them can look at each other at that point, and he's just apologizing because at that point he started to become a better person,
Right.
and his dad doesn't know that, but all these things have happened where he's still not a good guy, but he's not who he was when he was being kicked around, when his dad was rightfully yelling at him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was a really like emotional moment. What's interesting is I think those are some of the bits that they may have trimmed in the version I watched, because in the version I watched, they didn't have much of a setup with that.
Okay.
Or
It's
mention
believable.
of a text, at all. You
It's
only
very brief. Yeah.
because he goes on the run and he ends up, for whatever reason, he's at his dad's house with the baby,
Okay.
and his sister shows up, and you're like, wait, how did okay? And she checks the baby, and
Yeah.
he goes down the stairs, and that's where he gets the scene with his dad. But
Yeah.
it was kind of out of left field. She was like, well, didn't you get my texts or anything? And he's like, no. It's like, I'm like, what texts? Where? I didn't even see that
Okay.
part. So I think they trimmed some of that part out, unfortunately, because it was a bit out of left field. And there were a couple other moments in this film too that the version that I watched,
Right.
things weren't quite so coherent. You're like, okay.
I like that we've watched different versions because it feels like we're covering it more extensively.
Yeah,
Somehow.
no, I mean, I wish that moments were in there, and in all honesty, when you get to the one part involving the granddad, who's the mastermind behind all this, and his
Yes.
motivation behind it too, I'm just like, wait, what? I like it as well with the son, because that was kind of like, in the version again that I watched, it was kind of, you could piece it together, but at the same time, you're just like,
I don't remember them like explaining it. It's like you get to that moment where it's like, yes, we are going to finally tell you this is what has happened. But a lot of, and it's one of the things I really liked about it too, because it always makes me wonder if the versions we get are normally the full ones or if these are the truncated ones, because you have questions like that where go, oh, do they just not make movies like we make movies? And because that's some of the, movie making does vary across the globe because different cultures want to see different things. But there was a lot in this one where I felt like they set up things that were going, here's this thing
yeah,
that you're not going to need to know about necessarily right away. And then all of a sudden it comes up again. You go, oh, it's paying off. I didn't just see that to see that. It's not just this moment.
right.
Like there's a moment that you may or may not have had where it's like midway through the sequence where they're just taking care of the baby, where Thongs and Octopus are just watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing of, they're putting paddles on a guy in a hospital, and
Oh,
Thong's
yeah.
like, oh, that's how they revived him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, throwaway little thing. Turns out it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
And I'm not going to explain that unless we have to.
No, we don't have to explain it. But I didn't even really put that together till the end. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, because they because of what happened earlier. Yeah, it's an unusual film. I liked it. I enjoyed it, but I think the pacing, and from what we are used to, probably for lack of a better term, as Westerners, consumers of the Jackie Chan film versions that we usually get,
Yeah.
it is definitely a bit different. So going into it, if you're thinking you're going to get what we've seen on the big screen here in the US cinema as your standard Jackie Chan film, that's not what you're going to get with this movie. That doesn't make it bad, but I'm just trying to set expectations a bit, going, this, you still got those wonderful action sequences that to this day, Jackie's choreography and that for fight scenes is just it use of environment and props. You've consumed a lot of Asian cinema. I've watched a bit, a lot, and for some reason with his films, he really uses a hell of a lot more of the environment than you see in I'm not saying no one else, but it's not as frequent as in his films. Whereas in his films, he's using everything in the set.
If you go back to like Kung Fu Theater, I mean, every movie ended in like 3 guys fighting in a field.
There's a big open space.
Yeah, they just like, okay, we'll drive for 5 minutes. It seemed like it was the same field for a lot of them too. It's just somewhere behind the studio or something. Who knows?
But it was always wide open areas. Even one of my favorite of all time, Return to the 36th Chamber. A lot of the fight scenes happen in wide open areas, and Jackie's stuff, I mean, that in the apartment when they have a fight sequence in this apartment, and you're like, there's not a lot of room not only for them to do stuff but to shoot. I mean, you've got a guy with a camera.
It's a really neatly designed area, and then to have them tussling back and forth because the spaces kind of interconnect.
Yeah.
And there's like sliding doors to kind of cut them off. So it's like, it is and they're up on like probably the 10th floor at least or something. They're up high. I had a note saying like the first actual fight scene takes place like 15 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
There's an action sequence in the beginning, but the first like fight scene is, and there's some over and under cranking in it too. And I'm like, this is fine. But the apartment one is probably one of the highlight ones, I'd have to say. One, just because the environment, like we said, and 2, because of the other person involved.
Yes.
You know who Inspector Steve Mock is, right?
No, I didn't. I mean, he looked familiar, but I'm not.
It's Yuen Biao.
Oh, is that who? Oh,
that's kind of the joke when he first bumps into him in the street. He's like, "Oh, you didn't get the thing for the
high school reunion."
The reunion, and I'm like, oh, of course, that's a good joke for them because they were in school together. So it makes sense, and it also makes sense for those characters then, because he's got this kind of fondness for him because he feels that he knows him because they were in school together.
Right. Well,
so
and then
the things he kind of lets him get away with to some degree until you get to the point where he can't.
And then the scene too. What I like about Jackie Chan films, and it's still evident in that, and I know this sounds weird, folks, and I'm just saying that different cultures handle action sequences differently, and I've always loved how action sequences are handled in a lot of Asian cinema, because you normally you do have foot soldiers that get wiped out pretty quick, but when you have a smaller cast like this one has, Jackie's not the only talent. Like, he's not the only one that can kick butt. Like you said, holy crap, the inspector, like, he's just as good, if not better, at some scenes than Thongs. It's like,
it's Ewan. So
and,
yeah. I'm really hoping I've worked on pronouncing his name for a while. It's not spelled the way I would think I would say it that way. So I hope I get it right.
But even his, even Octopus, Louis Koo, both of them, all 3 of them, everybody in here just about who's involved in the fights have fighting talent. They aren't just foot soldier guys that get taken out by like one punch for the most part. You do get a few of them, but not many. Anybody who has a character name, they have some talent, and they go toe to toe with Jackie, which I like because it makes the fights more believable.
Dude, the Jackie Chan stunt team is nothing to sneeze at. Those guys work together. Have worked together for decades. They're insane.
When the inspectors started fighting, I was like, whoa. I'm like, okay.
And now you know who it was. Now
And-
you understand
And now I
why.
understand why completely. It makes sense. And at the same time, I'm like, well, that just made it better though, because we don't just have thongs knowing how to fight. And
Yeah.
Octopus kind of he does know how to fight, but you can tell he's not quite thongs level. But then the inspector's in there, you're just like, oh, that guy can kick some holy wow.
I was thinking that slow motion backflip in Dragons Forever, where he's landing on like a girder that's about this way. Just, oh my god.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. The cinematography in here, I always love the cinematography, especially with these films, because they show you these guys are doing these stunts for real. These are the stars that are also doing their own stunts. And oh, by the way, there's no net down there. There's
Most of the time,
for
no.
the
There's
most of the
usually
time,
a crash mat or a mattress, but that's about
right.
it.
Jackie has a seat in here, thongs to where he's escaping, and he's got to hop from air conditioner to air conditioner that sticks out of the buildings.
It was
And
such a video game. That was like an 80s video game thing to me.
it was. But at the same time, you realize that's Jackie Chan doing it. That's an 8-story building. And yeah, it's like you're
Did they have the bloopers in the
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he jumps down at least 4 or 5 of them for
Yeah.
that one scene, and Bluff's like, I have to go back up there. It's scary up there. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, because you are up there
Yeah, he was up there.
fixing the air conditioning.
They were trying to do it as one take with the joke, and then then Bune does some improv, and Jack, why are you improving?
It's not the line. What are you doing?
It's not the line. But it is an enjoyable Jackie Chan film. The pacing, like I said, I think is the only thing that really was a little awkward for me in it. In that you had the great action sequences, and then it really kind of slowed down with the fun character moments and the 3 Men and a Baby type montage.
Yes,
Which was really
exactly what that felt like to me too.
which was really great. But then you get these awesome action sequences, then it slowed out again, and you're just like, oh.
Because they talk about like, okay, you're gonna have to wait for like a week or 2 weeks that they're gonna have this kid. I'm like, it felt like they had this kid for like 6 months.
Me too. That's the way it felt like. I'm like, how long did they have this kid? I'm like,
I enjoyed all those moments, but I'm like, man, this is a lot of the film. So yeah, you got, like you said, you got to be prepared for that, and it's fun.
oh yeah, I mean it's
I
fun.
was jealous because they went into a Toys R Us.
Oh my god, yeah, that's a Toys R Us. Oh my god, and it makes for a hilarious checkout scene. I loved the checkout lady. That was hilarious.
And Octopus just goes, okay, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
So we'll wrap it up here, folks. Yeah, Robin B. Hood. Doc, I guess rate it or recommend it, however you want to do it. Where would you place this film?
This was one where it was like right after it came out, like right after I wasn't keeping caught up on every Jackie Chan film pretty much every more. So that's part of why this one has eluded me for 15 years. It's just been kind of there. So I had no expectations. This is not the movie I watched was not the movie I actually expected to watch, if you will, because the title kind of leads you in a direction that wasn't the direction of the film, but that's fine. I guess the original title translates more into Baby Project, which makes more sense. Guess,
Yeah,
but
well,
it's not real. It doesn't really market. It's not marketable here as what would you call that? But fine.
Well,
but yes, this is. I immediately put this very high in the list of Jackie Chan films I've watched. It was very, very enjoyable. And yeah, is it a little long? Fine, but my attention span has been kind of wonky the last year or so with everything going on. I actually started it, and I don't think if I paused it once, I paused it once. I watched the entire 2 hours and 15 minutes, just kept going. I didn't have to like take a break and walk away after 30 minutes. So that in and of itself gives it high praise for me right now. That it held my attention like a movie.
Like a movie.
Well, that analogy died on the vine.
It started out great, and then it just kind of.
Yeah, I got nothing.
No, I would recommend it too, especially if you want to see some of the acting chops that Jackie Chan actually has. I mean, the U.S. really, a lot of the stuff is the funny Jackie Chan guy. You know, I mean, he gets a few serious moments in the films we've seen, but not nearly as many as what you get in here, where he gets to kind of exercise his talents a little more and his chops. And there's a hilarious joke which many people may not get about him singing, because he's a successful singer. And there's a comment about the quality of Thong's singing, and I found that quite humorous. I'm like, oh, there's a little dig for so I would recommend it too, and I have given stub ratings for the others. So for this one, I would have to give it, I'm going to give it a solid 4 stubs. Okay.
That seems fair.
It's not 5. And it's only because, even as much as I enjoyed the character moments and the action sequences and kind of the blending, the pacing did make it a bit hard to get through some of the scenes, only because you were getting into it in jazz, and then it just kind of really slows down for some wonderful character moments. But at the same time, you're just like, oh, you got me so jazzed for these action sequences, and now I'm just like, yeah, okay. But still, 4 out of 5 stubs, I think. Worth a watch for sure. Just don't go in expecting what you've seen maybe in the past, like Rumble the Bronx or you know, Rush Hour. So there you have it, folks. Thank you for listening to this extended edition. When this airs, the AMA will be later today on the channel. I don't know if anyone's going to show up, but 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, the AMA. And now I've shilled. So Doctavius, if you have anything at all to shill, I know COVID put kind of a thing on your acting and the troupe, but do you have anything to shill? Please, it's all yours, sir.
That is a good question, because I was prepared for the synopsis and I wasn't prepared for
the
this.
shilling.
We did get to do like a test show of Shakespeare earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have gone better had it not been for those winning Bucks, because they were playing in town that day. And best place is 10 blocks away from the Fiserv.
And that's the Boozy Bard?
Yes, Boozy Bard. So we don't have the next show scheduled, in part because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And July kind of snuck up on us, and they're still playing basketball. So so what I will shill in that regard is the Boozy Bard YouTube channel.
Okay.
Because last year we moved to doing some live shows through Zoom broadcast to Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
This year, the YouTube channel has been hosting once a month dare I use the word classic show? An archival show, I suppose.
Archival show. There you go.
So we've been going back through the video archive and posting full shows,
Mm-hmm.
with the halftime song included, so long as YouTube doesn't ding us too much, because sometimes it goes, that seems familiar, because they're parody songs.
Yes.
Put the Shakespearean lyrics. So I actually have to prepare the one for this month, because I wasn't ready for it. But if you would be so inclined, go over to Boozy Bard Productions on YouTube, subscribe, maybe watch something. The subscriptions will help my ego immensely, and I need all the help I can get. So
well, sir, you are number 1 aces in my book, sir. And you know, thank you for being here and doing all kinds of different things for the Final Cut for nearly half the time I've known you. So
that's true.
It's not far off, sir.
Math is not always my friend. This is true.
Well, there you have it, folks. I hope you've enjoyed these special extended episodes. We might have a few other tidbits happening this month yet. It all depends on what I can work out and have time for, because I don't have a whole lot of projects going on. So. So I thank you all for watching. And remember, as always, till next time, keep that ticket stub.